Curious, does anyone know types of web storage? Cache. How many websites do you go to that ask you to accept their cookies? Yeah, cookies. There's also one called local storage and session storage. What these all are, let me open Chrome here so we can look at it. We're introducing a new tab in the DevTools. So we have elements to show us our HTML and CSS. We have the console, gives us JavaScript output. We have sources where we can check every file in our application and run it line by line and checking it along the way if needed. The one that we're going to add now on top of these three is application. Application. This is in your browser where websites can store data. Why is this nice? Well, when you log into a site, it memorizes your preferences, your settings. Maybe it remembers that you're logged in. That's what we'll use it for eventually. So that if the user refreshes your web page or comes back to it later, they don't have to redo all of their setup process. The website remembers. And that doesn't necessarily have to be saved in the database. So stuff that doesn't have to be saved in the database is just stored locally on your computer when you visit the site. So anyone that visits your site, you have the ability to save stuff on their computer. Amazing. And that's because of Chrome or any other browser that will offer some sort of web storage. Cookies have been used a lot in the past. We won't use them. We're going to stick just to local storage and session storage. And then cache is pretty similar to cookies in the way it stores things, slight differences. We don't deal with these at all. We're going to focus on these two because these are now the most used, local storage and session storage. The main reason is they just have so much space. It's like 4 GB per client. So you can save quite a bit of data on someone's PC if you need to. There's no need to save that much. We're only ever saving JSON in here. We have the ability to. So local storage and session storage, we get to these through the application. And in order to actually see what's being stored, you have to open it and then click on what's currently being stored. And notice, there's a lot of websites saving stuff on my computer. I haven't seen this many in a while. And these are just random sites or sites that we use that save tokens, whether you're logged in or not. But you can save anything in here that you could save as JSON. So arrays, objects, strings, numbers, booleans, they can be saved in local storage. Functions can't. Just like JSON can't store functions, these won't either. So what's the difference between local and session storage? Not JD, MD.
You have to download a Chrome extension to look at those?
I did not. So if you open up your DevTools and you don't see the tab, it looks like, why is it staying there? Okay. Like I don't see application, click on the arrows. It will be on the menu. Eventually. All right, so we have local storage and we have session storage. What's the difference? Session storage saves your data for the session, meaning if they get away from your website, the data is automatically deleted. So data exists while you are on the site, but is automatically purged when you leave. So this is something that maybe they only need for that one session. It's something that needs to be enacted every time. So we'll be using this less because we want local storage. Local storage persists until you delete it manually or with expiration. So we're just going to be saving stuff to local storage. It doesn't matter if it's there. It won't affect the user. If they really want it gone, they can come into their tab. They can go to their application and they can click this button here. And I'm not even afraid of this. All this looks important. Don't care. When I visit a site again, it will resave it if I need it. So we want to stick with local storage so it stays. You'll notice session storage may have something from Google. Nope. Some sites I go to, it may pop up. As soon as you leave, it disappears. So how do we save stuff to local storage? Then how do we retrieve stuff from local storage? Fortunately, when you're connected to an HTML page, you get variables from your browser and from your HTML page. We've covered some of these. What are the 2 main objects you're given when you link an HTML page to your JavaScript page? 2 objects we get. Well, there's more than that, but there's 2 that we've covered. There's 2 variables that just now exist in my JavaScript. One that we use all the time. Document. So we have the document, which is the HTML page. We may not remember the other one, the window. And this is the browser. So we get all these preset tools. Well, another thing we get is local storage, camel case, just like that. And local storage is an object. So if I want to add a key to it, I can add a key to it with a value. If I need it, I can pull it back. But I get to use this word as if local storage exists on my machine because I'm connected to the HTML page. This will refer to whoever's visiting the site's local storage. And we have a getter and a setter method. Who's heard of getters and setters? You may have heard the word, you may not know what context. Getters and setters in computer programming alone just involves how do you save data and get data using a certain mechanism. So I have this new feature. I would like users to be able to save data and get data. I'll make a getter and a setter. There are 2 functions that I can use to interact with local storage. So the way the local storage enacted this principle is they made a get item method and a local storage.set item method. And this one will actually save to local storage. This will retrieve from local storage. Well, how do we set an item? We need to save something before we can get it. So there's 2 arguments we need to give. We need to give the key and the value because we're making an object. This is an object, and we're saying create a new key value pair inside that object. So let's make an item called ID and set it equal to some random number. If I go visit my site now and check my local storage and not this site, the actual site, there we go. Don't give me that. Here's my site. I'll go open up to application, local storage, click on my server here. There's the ID with the value. Right, so pretty straightforward as far as setting it. What do you want it to be called? What should it be equal to? Getting it is saying, what do you want me to get? I want you to get the ID from local storage. And when you do that, it will actually return it and save it in a variable. So I'll say const ID equals local storage, and it'll console log the ID. So here I'm saving it to local storage, I'm pulling it back out, and then I'm console logging it to make sure I retrieved it. So my console, sure enough, there's that ID from the console log on line 10. Questions up to here on how the syntax works? So this is an example of a getter and setter. Lots of programs have them, lots of frameworks have them, lots of libraries have them, and it's all about how do I interact with this mechanism. I can save stuff and I can get stuff.
So local storage is really defined.
Yep, it just exists, just like the document, as soon as we're linked to a web page, because the browser provides it. You used to have to say, because it's a property of the browser, you used to have to say window.localstorage, and this will still work. It's a property of the window, but they took that out and said, you don't have to say it. We know what you mean when you say local storage. You're referring to the Windows local storage. It automatically checks that for you. What the heck? Okay, so that's, and the nice thing is if you're using session storage, great. Just change the word from local to session. Now you're using session storage. So these are interchangeable. They work the exact same way, except session storage will do what when you leave the page? Which one persists, session storage or local storage? Local, yeah. So we'll typically be using local because we don't want them to, actually let's test this. Well, actually that won't work because every time we visit it, it's gonna save it again. Well, let's do this. We'll visit it once so that session storage has it. Let's check session storage here. Boop. So it has my ID. I'm going to delete the set item or comment it out and see if it persists when the page refreshes. It does. Let's go to another website now. Let's see if it still persists. I'll look at session storage. Oh, it's gone. I'll go back to my website on localhost. And in fact, it is still gone. So as soon as you leave the website, session storage goes away. But local, I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this. Why does this say intro to Axios? This is not the droid I'm looking for. Here we are. Okay. Local storage now has my ID. I'll go to another web page. I'll comment this out so it doesn't save it again. And I'll go back to my web page. And it's still there. So this is what we want, local storage. You can interact with this in one other way, because what data type is the storage variable again? It's an object. And it's just like as if we had a const local storage inside of our program. So if I had this object, how would I console log the ID? Cool. We have to imagine this is what we have locally. Because right here, I can say, instead of saying get item ID, I can say ID should be the local storage.id. So it's an object. If this exists in it, as it does, this will still find it and save it. The same way we can also set an item. We can say local storage.name, for example, equals Steve. And now Steve exists. So another syntax. The issue is, if you use this syntax to retrieve something, let's say console log local storage.age doesn't exist. In a lot of applications, this will crash your application. So you're trying to index a part of an object that doesn't exist. So in this case, if age may not exist when you're getting it, you want to do the get item method. Let's notice this. Age equals local storage dot get item. Age doesn't exist, but let's see what it console logs. Null. So get item is great because if it doesn't find what you're looking for, it doesn't break the program, it returns the value null, which is what we want, because then we can see, is this a true value or is it false? Is it a false value? So these are the safest to use. Just know you can use this syntax as well to assign and retrieve. Feeling comfortable with this concept? Okay. Let's take this one step further and I'll give you an exercise to practice it.
What happens when the user manually deletes it?
That is their prerogative, and our website should be able to not break if they do that. So one more challenge to us, if someone knows what they're doing and decides to delete our local storage. The way that we'll build full stack apps, what that means for the user is they'll get logged out. They'll have to relog back in if they delete their local storage. That's their fault. They get to deal with it.
What happens to it on the developers? It's still just there.
What's that? Sorry.
The code, sorry, I can't talk. So the code is still just there.
In local storage?
So like on the app.js file, the code where you set that and it's still there.
It is, yes, but whenever you're saving something to local storage, it's always going to be off of an event of some sort, kind of like a post request. We don't automatically save stuff to a database. We wait for them to click a button. So the next step on this is how could I create a button that when clicked adds data to local storage? We're going to clear this out. And we would like to make a button that when I click it, it adds maybe an object to local storage. That's this last piece. So I'm going to make a button, add to local storage, and give it an ID of my button. And then I'll grab it over here by its ID. Okay, random fun coming your way. Elizabeth, how could I add an event to this button that when clicked, it adds something to local storage? We don't care what it is yet, but kind of the framework to set that up. How do we? Yes, so here's our button, and that's what we want to put the click event on. So what would that look like? It is. And it's a click event that fires a function. We don't necessarily need the event object in a click event unless we want to know where they clicked, but we're still given it just in case. Okay, next piece, Carlos. I would like to add a, right now, let's just add a age equals 20 to local storage when they click this button. So how would I do that here?
Local storage, set item, page.
Cool. So now we don't see anything here, but when I click the button, bam, it's there. Hooray. Right, and this is great. For strings, numbers, and booleans, we don't have to worry about their format when we save it to local storage. We can click it here and see it just as its normal data. What if we weren't adding a primitive data type? What if we're adding a complex type like an object? So let's make an object here that we'd like to add to local storage. Const user is an object with a username of yo12313 something, and a as an ID of something. And we want this object to be saved in local storage. So what would I change here? Well, I want to add this entire object in one go. So I'll call it user in local storage, and then it says, what do you want to save? My user object. But something interesting is going to happen here. I add it. That's interesting. And I click on it. Why can't I see my data? So when it comes to complex data types, arrays and objects, we have to save it as JSON. Right now I'm saying save JavaScript, and local storage is like, okay, and it does it, kind of. But how would I, instead of sending a JavaScript object, turn this object to JSON when I send it? Parse is saying take JSON and turn it to JavaScript. So what's the counter method? JSON's a big string, so what's a good word to, oh, it's not the best word, but a word to say turn this into a string. Stringify it, which is a word, sure. So JSON.stringify my user, and then save it. Now when I click the button, notice instead of being this awkward JavaScript, when I click on it, ooh, I can see it now. But what does that mean when I try to pull it back? Let's say I'm now trying to retrieve the user object from local storage. Yeah, so I have to say local storage.get item user and or get item user, and this is going to return the JSON object. So I can either parse this or I can just parse this entire line here. Parse this when you pull it down, save it back as JavaScript. So if you're saving arrays or objects and retrieving them, just know you have to stringify it up, parse it down. Stringify up, parse it down. Cool. So this is the exercise. Go speed clicker. Make a site that tracks how many times the user has clicked anywhere on the page, or a specific button if you prefer, and display that click count to the user. So they click a button, they see, I'll get a mini demo going here in just a second so we can see it. Make it so the number of clicks will remain on the screen even after the site is refreshed. So they click 20 times, they refresh the page, it still says 20. They click the button and it increments to the next number. So it's remembering what they did when they last visited. And if you want to do extra credit, use a timing function to say you can only count, or you can only click for this amount to see how many clicks you can get in a certain amount of time. If you haven't looked at timing functions, I know I haven't brought them up because they're just kind of an extra. They're super fun. There is this mini write-up that you can read through and create a clock with. And that will show you how to use timing functions. Set timeout, set interval. You should only need this for the extra credit though. So if you get done with the first part quickly and you want to give it a go, I'll put both of these in Slack. And then give me like 2 minutes and I'll do a quick demo of what this should look like. Any questions on the exercise though? Nada. Cool. Yeah, this one's a pretty short write-up. Okay. All right, so you're good to go on that. I'll have a little demo in just a moment.